Is the FBI hiding a very important question surrounding its second investigation into then President Donald Trump in 2017, otherwise known as Russiagate?
Journalist Aaron Maté believes so. When he requested documents from the FBI about Russiagate, the FBI redacted the reasons why they suspected that Trump was a Russian agent. That is the basis for Aaron's latest piece for Real Clear Investigations. It's titled, FBI is Still Hiding Details of Russiagate, Newly Released Document Shows.
That suspicion was essentially the entire basis for opening the probe in the first place, Maté writes. While the original Trump-Russia investigation has been discredited, the public remains in the dark about why the FBI launched a follow-up counterintelligence probe that targeted Trump while he was newly in the White House and what ends it took to pursue it. Joining us now to discuss this is Aaron Maté himself. Aaron, welcome back to Rising. Nice to see you.
Good to be here.
So what have you uncovered with respect to why this investigation came into being in the first place?
Well, the FBI has offered no detail as to why it felt it had sufficient grounds to open up an investigation of a sitting president as a Russian agent. That was the basis for this investigation, which is launched in May 2017. And just to clarify for people, because it's a little confusing, so you have already Crossfire Hurricane, which was the initial Trump-Russia inquiry. This is the FBI on July 31st, 2016, during the presidential campaign, deciding based on a really vague tip about George Papadopoulos, a low-level Trump campaign volunteer, that they had grounds to investigate the Trump campaign for possibly conspiring with Russia. And after Trump gets elected in May 2017, this is now Trump's fourth month in office, Andrew McCabe, who's then the deputy director of the FBI, decides, you know what? We also have ground to not only be investigating Trump circle for ties to Russia, let's investigate the president personally himself as an agent of Russia. And that's what this investigation was. Now, in the document that I got, which is the opening communication which launched this investigation, it claims that there's a factual basis to launch this probe, but that factual basis is entirely redacted, which means that more than 7 years later, we still do not know why the FBI thought that it was appropriate to investigate a sitting president in the White House for being an agent of Russia. All we have are the public statements that McCabe has made. And what he said in public is that basically because Trump had fired Jim Comey just days earlier, that made him wonder what Trump has to hide. And why would Trump go ahead and fire Jim Comey if he wasn't working on behalf of Russia? And that, in McCabe's view, was sufficient predication. We've also gotten some details in news reports. So, for example, in January 2019, the New York Times first reported that the FBI had opened up the second probe of Trump. And they reported that the Steele dossier, which is the collection of Hillary Clinton-funded conspiracy theories, that was among the factors that fueled the FBI's concerns. And to that point, we already know from previous reporting, including by my colleague Paul Sperry at Real Clear, that right before McCabe opened up this counterintelligence probe of Trump in May 2017, the FBI re-engaged Christopher Steele after not talking to him for many months because he had previously been terminated as a source because he was blabbing his mouth to the media. But then McCabe decides, because he wants to build this new probe of Trump as a Russian agent, let's bring Christopher Steele back in. So they spoke to Steele. And I think it was, basically that Christopher Steele's ludicrous dossier, the fact that Trump had fired Comey, and McCabe in his head can't imagine why Trump would do that, except for the possibility that he was a Russian agent, was trying to cover something up, that's why he felt this was sufficient grounds. In my opinion, this wouldn't be grounds to, open up an investigation of anybody, let alone a sitting president of the U.S. It just underscores how ridiculous Russiagate was and how so many years later, we still don't know so many of the critical details.
I think it can be hard to tell whether information is being redacted because the authorities are genuinely trying to keep back something that is damaging or makes them look bad, or that they are redacting information because that is common standard practice. They would redact information even when there's nothing damaging because they're just so secretive and inclined to do it. So it can look malicious even if it's not. Now, it might very well be malicious in this case. Is there going to be an appetite or an interest in exploring perhaps some of these lines of inquiry you are exploring now that Republicans have control of Congress and a supportive president?
Well, Trump has vowed to reform the national security state to end the overreach of agencies like the FBI. He's appointed someone to head the FBI, Kash Patel, who was very critical of the Trump Russia investigation and helped. In fact, he helped expose the fact that the FBI was relying on the Steele dossier to get surveillance warrants on Trump campaign volunteer Carter Page and lying about it. And that's why, by the way, a lot of Democrats, including Adam Schiff, hate Kash Patel and don't want to see him confirmed to be the director of the FBI. So it'll be up to the Trump team how much sunlight they want to give on the story. But given the damage it's caused, I mean, recall, it's easy to forget it now, but at the height of this Trump Russia conspiracy theory was all consuming. Democrats who were watching MSNBC and listening to people like Adam Schiff, they were convinced that this was going to do Trump in, that Robert Mueller was going to uncover the secret Trump Russia conspiracy. Those of us who pushed back on it were marginalized and dismissed as being, Putin or Trump apologists. But now, at this point now, it's been so discredited that very few people defend the Russia investigation anymore. And the fact that the FBI still feels compelled to hide critical details, including why they launched a counterintelligence probe of Trump while he was sitting in the White House, I would hope would compel people to demand more answers and more scrutiny of these decisions.
Yeah, it totally consumed the news cycle for years. Various Russian actions, Russian involvement with the Trump campaign, Russian actions on social media companies being described as the decisive factor in spinning this tale about why Trump won. That was clearly something that I think a lot of mainstream media institutions and actually the Democratic Party itself internalized, that this was why, now we're going back 8 years, Hillary Clinton lost. That seemed to be the message that she took away from it. Do you think that negatively impacted the Democrats' ability to campaign effectively, that they were so hung up on this being the explanation for why Trump won, that they didn't have to do any kind of soul searching about their messaging or the issues they run on or any of those sorts of things?
Well, yeah, I mean, as someone who was not a big fan of Donald Trump, this was one of the many reasons why I was critical of Russiagate. I mean, the first reason was simply that it was just factually completely uh, baseless. And as journalists, we're supposed to look at the facts, not our partisan affiliations. And that was a major reason why Russiagate took off, is because a lot of journalists put facts to the side and went with their partisan hackery, basically. And that's why Russiagate was allowed to be the thing that it was, because journalists simply weren't doing their jobs. But politically, one of the reasons why I was against it on a political basis was not only the fact that it was basically criminalizing diplomacy with Russia, which I thought was a bad idea. I mean, I think Trump was right when he said we should have good relations with a rival nuclear power. The world's a more dangerous place if we don't, in my opinion. But also, politically, I couldn't think of a bigger gift to Donald Trump and the Republicans. Because if you're Trump in the White House, what more would you want than have your opposition, rather than being organized around policies that might be better alternatives to Trump's, or being critical of Trump's policies, being organized around a dumb conspiracy theory, literally the stupidest conspiracy theory I've ever seen in my lifetime. This idea that the president of the United States was elected based on a sprawling conspiracy with the Russian government, and just to keep him in line, the Kremlin was also blackmailing Trump with a P tape, which was literally what most Democratic pundits in the media were believing and promoting, and many of the people in their audience who didn't have the time to go through all the facts were led to believe. I mean, it's a huge gift to Trump. So yes, of course, this hurt the Democrats. Rather than becoming, I think, a party that was actually anti-establishment, going in the direction of someone like Bernie Sanders, who I think would have appealed to many Trump voters back in 2016, they doubled down on the Clinton wing of the party by embracing a literal Clinton-funded conspiracy theory, because that's what it was. It was a Clinton campaign that paid for Christopher Steele, and it was the FBI that covered up the fact it was relying on his dossier. And by the way, there's so much more to learn. Speaking of the Clinton campaign paying for Russiagate claims relied on by the FBI, the Clinton campaign also hired a firm called CrowdStrike, which was the entity that first accused Russia of hacking the DNC, which ultimately led to the claims that Russia hacked the DNC and gave those emails to WikiLeaks. Now, this claim originates with CrowdStrike, which is working for the Clinton campaign. And now we know from reporting that has come out, I've done a lot of this, that the FBI was relying on CrowdStrike's work. So just as it was relying on Christopher Steele's conspiracy theories, which were paid for by the Clinton campaign, it was also relying on another Clinton campaign contractor, CrowdStrike, to lodge its allegations that Russia hacked the DNC. And that was the foundational allegation of Russiagate. And I've tried through FOIA to get the FBI to release the documents it used from CrowdStrike, including CrowdStrike's reports, to make its allegations that Russia hacked the DNC, even after CrowdStrike's own CEO privately admitted to Congress that we actually have no evidence of Russian hacking. But yet the FBI refuses to release the CrowdStrike reports. And that's a part of the story where we still do not know a lot of information. So if we want to have answers, we want to get to the bottom of what happened in Russiagate, that's another place where we could have scrutiny under this new administration, is to what extent did the FBI rely on the work of a Clinton-funded contractor to lodge the foundational allegation that Russia hacked the DNC.
Aaron Maté, thank you so much for coming on to talk about that. Fascinating stuff. Great reporting, as always.
Thanks for having me.